Hey, and welcome to Successful Networking for Associations that drives engagement online or in person. I am Lee Gimple and really excited to be here with Peggy McElgan. I suspect most of you or many of you already know who we are, but it's the beginning, so we'll just do some quick introductions. My name's Lee. I am the founder of Better Meetings here in Washington, D.C. And I make meetings better. That's what we do here at Better Meetings. And really my passion, or the thing that I really specialize in, is meetings with connections. So how do we get people to build in networking? How do we really make that a valuable part of the meetings that we're running, either small meetings or big, conferences and conventions. So I'm doing that for a number of folks, but largely in the association world, which is where I was lucky enough to meet Peggy.
Hi, I have been in association management and an association professional for 30 years. Yeah, I started when I was 10. And while I have served in all positions and provided support across a variety of functions, for the last 20 years, I've mostly been executive and executive level support. I have been responsible for supporting meetings of 10 board members, all the way up to 5,000 professionals and everything in between. And this past year has been a challenge, no doubt, but the need to connect and collaborate in an effort to gain clarity, not certainty, has been powerful and at times admittedly overwhelming. Providing forums for learning, sharing, advancing, and understanding, though, has never been more needed or more important. And associations can fill this role because of their lens of mission-focused efforts that are able to offer a non-biased perspective that propels our world forward more healthily, more equitably, and more sustainably.
Thank you, Peggy. I feel like your introduction was much more mission focused than mine was. So we'll jump into the topic here. Hopefully the title is pretty self-explanatory in terms of successful networking, but just in terms of a caveat, this event was supposedly going to be in person here in DC, and it was going to be a learning lab. And the idea was that we were going to get all of you here together, in a room, and we were going to do these hands-on networking things, and you would actually walk home having done them yourselves as you would do them, in person. And what's happened instead is we're obviously here online, which really changes the session. And then also, the way we're doing it has changed, and that this is, I hope I'm not letting the cat out of the bag here, this is recorded. So it sort of, hamstrings us a little bit in terms of what we would actually do with networking. And I think in terms of a teachable moment, if we're talking about doing networking and prioritizing networking for your own events, you want to think about the space that you're in if you're there in person, but also you want to think about the platform that you're on. So, if that platform doesn't give you the opportunity to connect people and really let them meet and share and talk, you may want to relook at that, because as Peggy and I are going to talk about quite a bit here, is networking is a really big piece of why people go to these events, as opposed to just watching Peggy and me talk to you is not necessarily the draw that we might think it would be. So I think that's a little bit of the caveat going into this thing here. And yeah, I would just say, if you're planning your own events, think from the beginning, if we're going to prioritize networking, what does that look like in terms of our space or in terms of our platform here? The other thing that I just want to say is we're going to let the chat run, so that'll just keep going here in the side, hopefully here. And in fact, as I'm talking, if you want to just drop in where you are right now, what city you're in, what state, what country, if you're in your living room, just anything to get the chat going as to where you are, that would be great. And we're going to keep that running. I think a lot of times speakers and event planners will say with online events, we're going to turn off the chat and we want you to just focus on what's happening here on the screen. And we want you to just, focus on these pearls of wisdom that are coming from the stage. And I would look at it a little differently and say, the speaker is a catalyst to try and get people to engage or get a group to engage. And if you're engaging with other people on the chat and you're not totally wrapped or, enraptured by what Peggy and I are saying, I think it's still a win. I think it's still all about engagement. So we're going to keep that going. I would just say that there are going to be a couple times during this, the next 40 minutes or so, where we are going to just ask you to pause the chat for a moment so we can drop in some real-time instructions and some links and stuff like that. So yeah. Let's see here. Yeah, I think what we're going to do is actually do some networking, and Peggy will give you some instructions about how to do that in a sec. We're going to have you all introduce yourselves, and I know what you're thinking, that that seems a little crazy because we actually don't know how many people are out there. I assume this is a really popular session. I assume there are 1,000 people. So obviously not everyone can introduce him or herself for two really good reasons. One, you would have had to have been here 2 months earlier to do it. And then second, if there were even just 100 people at this session and we each gave you, we gave you each 30 seconds, it would just take forever. So we're going to try and do the best of both worlds. We're going to use something called a chat storm. And there we go. Peggy's going to just walk you through what that looks like. I think it's a really nice way to get big groups online to get a sense for who's there. So Peggy, you want to tell folks how to do this?
Sure. So this is a quick and easy way for everyone to introduce themselves. And the one big thing to do is to not hit enter in the chat box until we tell you to do so. So hold on, don't hit enter until we tell you to do so. We'll give you a couple minutes to type an introduction about yourself, typical things like your name, where you are, your organization, what your organization is, and what you do there. And when you're thinking about your actual role and responsibilities, put that in as opposed to your title, because that is probably a little bit more insightful as to who you are and helpful for networking in a networking context. And then we want you to add 2 favorite things into your introduction. Now, sometimes people get really stressed about thinking about their absolute most favorite 2 favorite things. Whatever comes to mind, your 2 favorite things, whatever comes to mind, that's going to be perfect. So, you might like Doritos and Golden Doodles, or you might like the beach and your grandchildren, or you might like hiking and margaritas, or in my case, martinis. We're just trying to humanize this process a couple of ways, and it humanize it a little bit. And so any 2 favorite things will work. And if you have time and you want to add something else, like what you're watching on TV or your favorite book or some trips you have planned post-COVID, that works also. But remember, don't hit go until we tell you to. Nothing in the chat until we tell you to enter. So now give yourself a couple of minutes and type out some introduction about yourself. So don't hit anything until we tell you.
I feel like this is probably the only segment here at the conference where we're going to talk about Doritos and Golden Doodles is my guess.
Exactly.
So, all right. So we'll give people a couple minutes here to type. We'll come back on in just a minute or so. We'll just let it be sort of silent or
we're going to have a Zen moment.
Yeah, we'll give it a little bit of time.
A little, COVID, post-COVID Zen.
Peggy and I are also going to do this thing, and we're going to put in our own info, but we already know what's coming, so we just have time to blow bubbles now.
I typed mine in ages ago.
Okay, so we'll give people about another minute or so to keep typing. Again, try not to hit return yet. I'm sure somebody's probably already done that. It is very hard to to avoid that sort of muscle memory. So as you're typing in some final things, books that you're reading or TV that you're watching or anything like that as part of your intro, again, try not to hit return yet. Peggy, you want to just quickly talk about how we met, the sort of networking success story, and then when you're done, we'll have everyone put their thing in. So, all right, how did we meet, Peggy?
We met online, but not by Tinder or Bumble or any of those dating sites. We met through a session at ASAE, and we were chatting in the chat, and it was recommended that all the chatters put their name and their emails in the chat so that we could follow up and connect to not only sort through the confusion that results from a global crisis, because this was early on in the pandemic, but to get to know each other and those with similar interests, passions, and commitments. So passion, purpose, and play. I have long said that those three things in the proper proportion leads to a fulfilling life. And I'm always working on that juggle. And for the past year, that's what this group that we originally met on ASAE has done. We've met via email and continued to discuss throughout the year. And in these meetings, we have been able to get a better sense of each other and really become friends. I can't wait to have a drink with all of my new buddies. And Lee has been an outstanding leader of this group. He has shown so many of us how to be creative in virtual meetings and how to focus on what is really important. And those of us heeding his wisdom have been more successful than ever before. So thank you, Lee.
I feel like that was more than how we met. That was like an endorsement there. I appreciate that, Peg.
It's all true.
So we met online. That's what we will tell people. Okay, so that's 2-ish minutes, 3-ish minutes. Hopefully that's given people time to talk or to type in their little intros here. I have my my countdown explosive here. Peggy, you want to give people the countdown? And
Sure.
yeah.
3, 2, 1, enter. Ooh, jazz hands, jazz hands.
All right, so it doesn't do us any good. We got streamers all over the place here. I also hope we're the only session that has streamers like that. Yeah, so it doesn't do us any good if all we do is just enter in who we are and there's no time to read that. My guess again is like there's 10,000 people out there. It's going to be a lot to read and it's probably just like going bananas right now, I hope. So we're going to give you a little bit of time to go back and read through that, a little bit of time for, honestly, for Peggy and me to look at it as well and see who's here. My hope is that it starts to get these wheels turning a little bit in terms of the networking, and you can see that there are other people who, maybe used to work at the same association that you did, or, do similar work that you do, or maybe you're facing a problem that you're also facing or something like that, or maybe it's somebody who also likes Doritos and Golden Doodles. I don't know if we're going to have private chat available on this thing, but if we do, and somebody, has those same interests, or you say, oh my gosh, Peggy, you and I have the same thing in common, I would invite you just to send a message and connect. This is a session about networking, so we're going to try and be very networking centric. So, you're probably already doing it as I'm talking, but take another minute or two, just scroll back up what's probably 30 pages of introductions, see who's here, and we're going to do the same thing. I'll give you another minute or so to keep reading, but just as you're doing that, kind of in my background voice here, I'm going to say that one thing that you're going to hear from Peggy and me quite a bit is that networking is something that you should do intentionally, and it's not an afterthought. So it may seem a little weird, and even more so that we're recording this, that we're giving you these 2 minutes to type in, and it's quiet and we're not talking, and then we're going to give you another 2 minutes to read through. But I hope one of the lessons that you take from this is that what happens here on stage with Peggy and me talking is that's not 100% of what a conference is or what a convention is, that there's a lot of other value that's happening outside of that. And it's not just the sage on the stage syndrome that's happening here. So connection is really big. Peggy and I are going to talk about that in just another minute or so. I'll give you another, 30 seconds or a minute to read back through. I'm sure it's not going to be enough time to read everything, but just take a look at that and we'll be back with you in a moment. Okay, you're probably still reading, and who knows what's happening in the chat right now. Hopefully it's encouraging and people are connecting here. So we've touched on this before. I think we're really going to dive into it, is this really central question, Peggy, of why do people go to conferences, or why do people go to events? And I think if we look at an agenda for an event, what you come to realize is that the thing that we think people go to conferences for is the content sessions and the keynotes and people standing in front of rooms doing PowerPoints. And in fact, I would invite you to look at your own agendas for your own events and see, just total up the hours for like keynotes and workshops and all that stuff versus networking events. And what it's often going to look like is something like this, right? So we have like 90% content, and then we have a little bit over here, sort of token networking. Maybe it's not 90-10, maybe it's 80-20, maybe it's 75-25, but the preponderance of time that we schedule is these learning sessions. And I think if we look at that agenda, that's what it looks like here. But if we ask ourselves, or if we ask our attendees and we say, well, why are you here? What did you get out of this event? Why did you fly to Vegas, or why did you sign on to this event? I think it looks more like this, right? People say, I like the content, but I also really like the networking, which is weird because if we say, why, does anyone here like networking? Everyone always says, no, I dislike networking. I don't like networking. But if we rephrase it a little bit and we say, okay, let's not use, the networking word, but let's say, do you like meeting people who do the same stuff that you do, who are in the same field? Do you like, engaging with people that are the only people in the world that understand that thing that really drives you? You're a pediatrician. You want to complain to other pediatricians about pediatrics things. Do you want to meet people that can help your career? Do you want to find a job? Do you want to find a partner on projects? You're looking for somebody who's already solved the problem that you're trying to solve. When we bring big groups of people together, that's at the heart of what an association is. And I know we'll touch on this in a little bit, Peggy, as you're doing your own work with the associations you're working with. So is that number 90-10? Is it 50-50, or is it is it really like maybe it should be 10% content and 90% networking? I think that's what we're really trying to get at here, is where is the value in bringing people together? And a lot of it is in those magical moments in hallways, or people going out to bars and really connecting, as opposed to people sitting in theater style seats watching PowerPoints. So I think the first thing that I would just say in terms of a takeaway here is that networking should be intentional, right? We should be doing this on purpose, online or in person. We should be making time for it, in our agendas, so that it is more equitable, or it is more balanced in terms of what we're trying to do with the time that valuable time that we have people together. And then I think the second thing I would say is, again, let's come back to this and let's say, is it 50-50? Is it 40-60? Is it 70-30? I don't know, but it's probably not 90-10, right? It's probably not 90% of the value in a conference is sitting in a seat watching a PowerPoint. It's probably a much bigger percentage of that pie goes to, the value comes from me connecting with other people here. So if we were in person again, we'd be doing all kinds of fun things in this space. We don't have that ability here. We're still going to try and give you a little bit of the playbook, or some pros and cons of how to do some of this stuff, as well as some little techniques. So let's do this. I'm gonna go through sort of bad networking and good networking. And Peggy, we've each prepared some cards. It feels like the late show here, where we're each gonna share some cards. Bad networking, we're representing with the cheese plate. We'll explain in a sec. What do you got for bad networking, Peggy? What comes to mind for you?
Chat box only.
Okay, tell me about that.
So where the only way people are connecting with each other or speaking with each other is through the chat box. So the chat box is valuable, as we've seen through this session. It is valuable, but it shouldn't be the only way that people can connect with each other.
Yeah, do what we say, not what we do here.
Well, we're limited by constraints beyond our power here.
All right, what's your next card, Peggy?
My next card is too many voices.
Too many voices. Okay.
So having 50, 20, and maybe even 10 people talking at the same time or with open mics is a nightmare because you get nothing. You get nothing. And then the dominant people tend to hog the screen time, which frankly, we've learned in the pandemic. There are a lot of people who have a lot of things to share when you throw yourselves into a smaller breakout.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, too many voices. What else you got for bad networking?
Entertainment, not networking. I'm not interested in sitting on a wine tasting where I don't get to taste the wine. So where you have an expert talking about doing a joint project or a joint activity, but then we don't get to do the activity. So, you know, a lot of people confuse entertainment and networking, and that's really problematic online. So it's easy to mix those two things up. So
Yeah,
it's
and I
important
think
that we have a chance to chat with each other and connect.
yeah, and I mean in that point, right? You're like watching someone drink wine, and you're just sitting there watching. And like I don't actually get. It's not like I'm in a space and I get to talk to somebody as we're both drinking wine.
Right.
It's like I
I'm
hired a
parched.
band.
I'm parched in that scenario. I'm parched.
Yeah. All right, so entertainment, not networking. This is my my explanation of the graphic here. The magic cheese plate, and I think this really sums up a lot of the pitfalls that I think we see in events. That you say, all right, tell me about the networking event you're doing, and people say, well, we put people in a room and we put out a cheese plate or a hummus dip or something, or it's even open bar, and we just assume that magic is going to happen because there's food out there. And people are going to go up and meet new people, and the right people are going to connect out there, you know, buyers and suppliers or whatever it is. And just, it's going to be amazing. And the reality is, even if we have a great cheese plate, it doesn't really pry people loose into saying, I am going to go and meet new people. I'm going to break away from, you know, Peggy and I are friends, but I'm going to walk away from Peggy and just into the void. It's really, really difficult. So I think there's lots of those scenarios. We see them in person and we see them online, but it's just like, well, we've brought the right people here and we're done. And we'd say, you know, there's more to be done there. So, okay, the next side, I'm going to start off with my cards on the plus side for good networking. This is intentional. This is sort of the theme of the day here is let's actually spend time on the networking sessions in the way that we would spend time with the keynote session or the workshop sessions, instead of just saying, well, we put out coffee, we hope something happens, or, you know, there's networking before the keynote. It's really just a waiting room, right? There's nothing happening. It's just people standing there, right? That's not networking, that's standing. So be intentional. That would be my first one. I actually don't know what card is coming next. What card do you have there, Peggy?
I have a reason to connect.
All right, tell me about that.
So good networking, you're around a round table working on something specific, something that's designed to have an outcome or to have some end goal in mind. So it's a reason to come together instead of just we're all standing in the room.
Yeah, and I'm going to ask you a question about this in about 5 minutes or so. But yeah, that's the sort of the picture that we have symbolized there. I think you have another card, and then
Yes,
I think
I
I have
do.
a card. Yeah.
Time boxing.
Unboxing. All right, tell us about that.
So good networking has time limits to it. We're not going to call it speed networking necessarily, but it helps to say that we have a conversation for 5 minutes or to talk about something specific for 10 minutes, and then we're going to move on. Because if we know that we have a time box around what we have to do, we're going to be focused. We're going to be intentional.
All right, so this is my last one for good things, and we're going to ask you all. Hopefully, you're like thinking like, oh, there's other things that they've missed. And we're going to give you a chance to submit those in a sec here. Okay, so this is naturally stitched in. There may be a better way to say that, but you know, often we think about going back to this thing. There's the networking time and there's not the networking time. You know, the networking hour was Thursday evening from 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock, and at 6 o'clock you missed it. There's no more networking. And I would say we can really stitch it in so that networking doesn't just have to happen in that 1 hour or at the coffee break, but you know, it's something that happens. We could design it so that networking happens in registration, or networking happens in the middle of the keynote or something like that. And again, we keep saying networking, but let's just think of it as meeting other people in, your world who do the thing that you do without necessarily walking up and saying, hi, my name is Lee and I've got this elevator pitch. It's, I think, more natural than that, especially if coming back to your point there about the reason to connect, Peggy, that it just seems natural. We just asked you, well, what's the future of this field? What's the future of pediatrics? Well, I'm talking to other pediatricians about it. Oh, I'm networking. I met all these, I met all these great people. So, I think that's really important. Then the other piece I would say is the more we stitch in meeting other people there, the more it spreads throughout the event. And it includes not just the attendees with themselves, but sponsors and exhibitors and speakers and all that. And I think for those sponsors and exhibitors, it's really liberating because you're not just, standing on a floor selling. So yeah, I think that's really important. Let's, all right, so those are our good and bad. We're going to ask you to just give us a moment here. We're going to try something a little different to pause the chat. I'm going to drop in a link there. I'm going to give you now another minute or so just to follow that link to this form. What did we miss? What's a good sign of networking? What's a bad sign of networking? Do you have any questions? We'll let you do that for just about a minute or two. Let's call it 2 minutes here. And Peggy, maybe we'll try and get this cheers thing going better this time. Let's see.
All right, I'm with you. I needed beer or wine to do that right.
You know what, Peggy, while people are filling that in, I'm going to just ask you to go on a little bit of a scavenger hunt and see if you can't find something close to you maybe or near you that's emblematic of your work or something that you think is just worth talking about. So just think about that. And so it's my hope as people are hopefully working on this form and adding to our brief little list that we'll get that back out to people in a format that is really helpful and is, dozens or hundreds of ideas from your peers, people actually doing stuff in the association world for the kinds of events that you're also working on. And that, it's helpful because it's coming from the same audience. So hopefully that's what's going to happen. And we'll send that back out if people put in their emails, and we'll maybe create a little community here. We'll see what happens.
There you go.
I think people might still be typing. We'll let them do that. But Peggy, you want to tell me what did you find? And this is like a little scavenger hunt networking thing that I think works really well online. Tell me about that.
I am show and telling my rubber band ball. Because
okay,
it's always on my desk and it's easy for me to access always. It's important because it reminds me that the work that we are in, which is this mission-driven association support or management, that we need to be flexible. So, it bends, it flexes, it does a lot of different things. We need to pull things together. We need to keep things together. Rubber bands help us keep papers together, keep paper clips together, keep my hair up, whatever it might be. Rubber bands help keep things together. It's creative problem solving. I had a bunch of rubber bands on my desk and I turned them into a ball, and it's fun. So, something that I can throw up in the air. If one of my staff members comes in and I'm in the middle of something, I can throw it at them. We can play catch, and sometimes it works in terms of just stimulating ideas, but and it's the fun part about the rubber band ball that I love the most, because we all need to take the things that we do seriously, and serious things require serious attention. But there are very few things that are really, really serious. So for example, pandemic, serious, no question, it's serious. Staying at home, maybe not so much. I mean, you can have fun with that. So I think it's a matter of balance. And this helps me remember that balance.
Yeah, and I think like the takeaway for me here is it's much easier for people to tell stories, particularly if they've got something in their hand, and that's a nice thing to do at home. And honestly, 2 years later, people are going to refer to you as like, oh, it's Peggy, the rubber band woman, right? And that's maybe what sticks more than, oh, that's someone else who runs an association management company, right? All right, so hopefully people are still typing stuff in. Hopefully we'll get this list out to people of awesome ideas and tips and all that other stuff. Looking forward to that. But so Peggy, still talking about the stuff that goes into the work that goes into the ball there. You run an AMC, that's the less exciting part next to the ball. Can you just talk a little bit about I guess sort of a moment of clarity about ramping up networking and maybe how you do that in your association events?
In fact, the pandemic kind of drove it home the same way in 2008, the recession drove it home. So in 2008, we went from doing large meetings to regional meetings for similar reasons that now we went from regional meetings to online. And what really drove it home for me, honestly, is part of our work with you, Lee, is the pivoting that we had to do, which frankly was really pirouetting, and I feel like a ballerina turning so many times, but it's the intentionality of coming together. It's understanding the real reasons why we come together, and that meetings have to be more than just conveying information. And this is true for in-person as well as online. But learning that not great in-person meeting and then putting it online, that's killer. That is killer. So by forcing us, right, by the world forcing us to we need to continue to educate, we need to continue to collaborate, we need to continue to learn from each other as well as from experts, but understanding how to do that best and intentionally applying time in the best way for your attendees, that really was an important moment for us. And working with you and Better Meetings and understanding the intentionality of what we were trying to do and when we were trying to do it and the audience that we were trying to inform, that creates magic. It really does create magic. So
I feel like we should just end this session right there. That sounds like such a nice wrap up moment, but alas, we have 10 minutes more. So, all right, but let me follow that thought and say, a minute ago, I was talking about this idea that networking doesn't just end at, it's the 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock networking hour, that it's this thing that I think it's a line that runs through an organization or a community, an association. So I wonder in that vein, when you think about associations, like, how do you see networking as part of, why do people join and why are they part of an organization? And I guess ultimately the long-term health and the profitability and the survivability of an association is what we really care about, right?
absolutely. And it actually, this moment in time really kind of heightens the raison d'être, the reason of being for a association. Associations can do something that no other organization can do, which is bring people together in a mission-based or shared value environment and build relationships. And of course, there's ways of doing that. Intentionality, of course, is the key to it, but
Yeah.
building trust and intentionally connecting on shared values and mission, that is what associations can do that no other organizations can do. You can't get this through Facebook. You can't get this through a Twitch stream, and it's hard to do without intention. But it is truly the only thing that associations do better than any other organization representing a field. So, or representing some thought or some science or whatever your organization might be representing. So
Yeah,
that is
yeah.
really, that's it. And it's the relationships that make it special, and networking, intentional networking is the best way of developing those relationships.
Yeah. I mean, it's been sort of as a sidebar, it's been fun to hear about, your stories where just the feedback that you've gotten, I think, from those events where people just seem so thrilled to be able to connect with everyone, in their field.
Yep. And learning from each other. I mean, that's a big piece. Sharing
Yeah.
and learning from each other. That networking is, it's better than any cheese plate.
All right, so we're not going to go out on cheese plate. We're going to try something a little experimental here. We're getting towards the end of our time. I want to just try one last thing to see if we can put networking in a different context. We are, we're trying to connect this network of people or this group of people, and there's a number of us that are all right here at this time in this place in this session, but we're going to try and extend it and see if we can make this bigger. So I know not everyone has access to Collaborate, which is ASAE's online bulletin board or community platform there, but we're going to use that as sort of the best proxy that we have for what most associations have, is something similar to that, this online community. So I just want you to go through, and we're going to go through this little exercise. I'm going to have Peggy give you a little bit of instruction here in just a sec, I think. But if you look up the screen, I just want you to create two columns. One is learn and one is share. Learn is basically, here are things that I would like to know about, creating a podcast, merging two associations, monetizing CEUs, right? And here are some things that I can share, right? I know how to lobby Congress. That's something that we do. And I want you to just create a list of those things. Hopefully you got a piece of paper there or pen, or you can just, maybe do it mentally. Just think about that for about a minute or so. See if you can get, 3 things a piece that you would like to learn or that you think you could share. And I will say, if you're a consultant or something and you're an expert in sponsorship, you don't have to share everything you know for free. But it's like, what would you talk about at a cocktail party, right? What would you, if you met somebody in the hallway at a conference, what would you share? So let's give you that extra minute or so here. Again, it's a little weird to just give you sort of quiet time in the middle of a session, but hopefully that'll work.
Like Jimmy Fallon or Jimmy Kimmel, one of them, their Zen moment.
Right. Yeah. I assume people have a couple things. Peggy, you want to tell them what to do next here, looking at the screen?
Okay, I want you to look at your 2 lists. So you should have at least 3 on each of your Learn Share lists. And I want you to pick just one from each category that is particularly strong or really resonates with you. So you'll have 1 Learn and 1 Share.
Yeah, great.
Okay.
Makes sense. Okay, so now you guys will have to humor us again. Just hit pause on the chat, which hopefully is connecting all kinds of people. Just hit pause there for a sec. I'm going to drop in a link. That link will go to Collaborate. And what I want you to do is follow the link that we're dropping in now. It'll take you to Collaborate, to a post that we've already set up, hopefully. And you're just going to put your sentence in there of like, I would like to learn how to better monetize the CEU classes we offer, and I can share how to improve virtual networking and events. You're just going to drop that in. You don't have to wait for us. It's not like a chat storm. Just whenever you're ready, go for it. And we'll give you about, I don't know, 30 seconds, a minute or so. It shouldn't take you that long to paste in what you've just written there or copy pasted. So thank you for playing along with us here. This is a bit of an experiment to see how this works. And so our hope is that we just like blow up Collaborate. I would love to see this be the most popular post ever. And I would love to see it take on a life of its own, which is sort of how Peggy and I met through something similar that we did off another session. And just a lovely way to connect people, and something that isn't limited by the time and the space of only the people who were at this session got to connect with the other people at this session, but hopefully it lives on here. Okay, so hopefully people are doing that. I'm sure it's going bananas. I love this. We're back in April, and I'm sure whatever is happening 2 months from now is going to be amazing, Peggy. All right, so that's sort of the last kind of quasi networking thing that we have to do. You want to just sort of recap what we've been talking about here?
Sure. So hopefully you've gotten a few things out of this session in terms of philosophically how and why we do networking and why it's important. but also hopefully you've walked away with a couple of techniques that you can use yourself, and maybe you also managed to meet someone even though it's just online and we're not all in the same room. So
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so just to jump in on that, my last sort of quasi uh, PowerPoint note cards here. So what did we do? We did a chat storm. That was at the very beginning that Peggy walked you through, that sort of massive introduction that we did. We just did this learn share, and then from the learn share, we actually connected it to a this community platform. In this case, Collaborate, but a lot of you have other things through Higher Logic or Breezio or something like that looks pretty similar, or Slack. So in a space or with a different platform, there's a ton of other things we could do. And I would also say, just because it's online doesn't mean that we can't do virtual networking. I mean, Peggy is a testament to that we've actually never met in person. But I'm looking forward to that. We'll get a drink done in Richmond or something. So that's what we squeezed in here in 45 minutes. Hopefully you found that valuable. And then the top takeaways that Peggy just mentioned too, that I would come back to is, think of networking as maybe half the value of events, not this like nice to have that happens in 10%, but it's really valuable. That's what gets people to come to these things. And then to be intentional with it, that you think about, if I'm going to do a networking session, let's put in the same time and energy and thought that we might put into a keynote session, as opposed to just saying, well, I put out coffee, I hope things happen, right? That there's a lot of value here, and people really want this to work well. And it's much easier from a managerial perspective to make this go well and help everyone out, rather than just putting out coffee, but doing things more intentionally. One last bit of advice that I would leave you with is that even if you don't do any of this stuff, where you're stitching in networking to the keynotes or whatever else, and you're just doing a straight keynote or you're just doing a recorded session, I would always say, just giving people the time and the space after it, right? Almost like recess, is to say, hey, we've set aside this room, we've set aside this time, we're creating online breakout rooms. Do you want to talk about the session that just happened? And it's this amazing thing that happens at conferences, is like these little neurons start firing in our brain, and we go, oh, I just heard this session about, the future of my industry, or challenges, or, how to deal with the new pandemic or something. I want to talk to other people around me who understand that and really can relate. So just setting aside that time also helps us, build out an agenda, I think, but is really an easy add-on, I think, with a lot of return, or, bang for the buck there. And then I think we're coming towards the end here. I'm gonna ask you again just to pause the chat for a moment and let me check in with future Lee and future Peggy and see what, if we have any announcements that we want to make, or any last thoughts to drop into the chat. So if you can just give us a moment there. Yeah, I think that's about it. And I wanted to thank you all for coming and participating. Certainly for Peggy for doing this with me, and for championing this stuff out in the real world, and actually making sure that it's happening in your events. Last thoughts, Peggy?
Most people are interested in passion, purpose, and play in balance, and associations can help make this happen with mission-based intentionality, learning, collaborating, and networking.
Cool. So again, thanks everyone for attending the session. We'd encourage you to stay in touch, obviously, with anyone that you've connected with here. And certainly to revisit that post in Collaborate, and come back and try and find people that you can learn from or share with. I think that's really the point of it. Hopefully that lives on. And we hope you enjoy the rest of the MMC conference here, and good luck with your own events in the future. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Lee.